Harvey, come on, buddy. Don't make me chase you, Grayson Miller muttered, half laughing as his 7-year-old son darted behind the candy rack at the back of the gas station. It was just past midnight. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a tired glow over the near-empty store. Grayson rubbed his eyes with one hand, the other holding a mop he hadn't had the chance to use yet. He worked nights at this rundown station outside of Portland 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 days a week. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept a roof over their heads and food in Harvey's lunchbox. The babysitter down the block watched Harvey until she went to bed, then Grayson brought him here. It wasn't ideal, but it was safe. He set up a little cot in the back office, and Harvey had his books, his tablet, and an old radio. Tonight had been quiet. Rain tapped gently on the windows. Grayson was just about to lock the doors and mop the floor when she walked in. He heard the soft click of heels before he saw her. Then the door opened, and in stepped a woman who looked like she belonged in a magazine, not at a gas station at 1 in the morning. Taupe trench coat cinched at the waist. Long, sleek dark hair. Her lipstick was deep red, her posture perfect, like she hadn't been caught in the rain at all. She paused when their eyes met. "Coffee?" she asked, her voice low, calm, like she wasn't surprised by the location or the hour. Grayson blinked, then quickly stepped around the counter. Yeah. It's not great, but it's hot." She smiled faintly and walked toward the machine. Grayson tried not to stare, but damn. She moved like she owned the world. "Rough night?" he asked, trying to sound casual. She poured herself a cup, then turned toward him. "Not really. Just needed to get out of the house." He nodded slowly. "Sure. Sometimes it's like that." She looked at the little cot through the glass of the back office window. "Your son." Grayson followed her gaze. Harvey had finally fallen asleep, curled under a Batman blanket. "Yeah," he said, his chest tightening. "He's everything." Her eyes flickered to his for a moment, and something passed between them soft and unreadable. "I'm Olivia," she said, holding out her hand. "Grayson." They shook. Her hand was warm, small, but firm. He expected her to leave after that, but instead, she leaned against the counter, sipping her coffee like she had nowhere else to be. "You always bring him here?" she asked gently. "Only when I can't find someone to stay over. He's a good kid. Doesn't complain." Olivia nodded. "You're a good dad." Grayson chuckled under his breath. "Thanks. Not sure he'd say that when I pull him out of bed at midnight." She smiled. "Still. That's rare." He didn't know what it was about her. Maybe it was the calm way she looked at him, like he wasn't just a guy behind a counter, but something loosened in his chest. "You live nearby?" he asked, trying not to sound too interested. She hesitated. "Sort of. I drive through here sometimes when I need to think." He nodded. "Fair enough." She finished her coffee, placed the cup in the trash, and looked at him again. "You gonna be here tomorrow night?" Grayson blinked. Yeah. Same shift." She gave him one last look, then smiled. "Maybe I'll see you." Then she was gone. He stood frozen for a second, then glanced toward Harvey. Did that just happen? He whispered to himself. The next night, she came back. And the night after that. Always dressed like she was stepping off a private jet, always asking questions about his life, never sharing much about hers. She brought pastries one night. "For you and Harvey." Grayson hesitated. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she said simply. He didn't ask how much they cost, but they were the kind of pastries with gold flakes on top. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked finally, one night 2 weeks in. She smiled but didn't answer. "Tell me more about Harvey." Grayson couldn't stop himself. He told her about Harvey's obsession with dinosaurs, how he pretended to be a paleontologist at the park, how he called Grayson Captain Dad when they played pretend. "You're everything to him," Olivia said softly. Grayson looked down. "He's everything to me." He didn't notice the way she looked at him when he said it. It wasn't until the 3rd week that he started to feel something dangerous. He looked forward to her visits. He thought about her when she wasn't there. He dreamed about her dreams he tried to ignore when he opened his eyes to his reality. Minimum wage, overdue bills, and no room for anything close to romance. Then came the night she didn't show. He tried to shake it off. Maybe something came up. Maybe she was out of town. But when she didn't come the next night either, he felt it like a punch. He told himself he was being ridiculous. Then, 1 week later, she returned. But this time, she didn't come in quietly. She stepped out of a sleek black car with tinted windows. A driver waited by the curb, and she wore a dress that probably cost more than his rent. Grayson was standing frozen at the counter. Sorry, she said, walking in like the place belonged to her. I had to fly to New York last minute. Fly? He repeated. She hesitated. There's something I need to tell you. He crossed his arms slowly. Yeah, I figured. She glanced toward Harvey's sleeping form, then back at him. I'm not who you think I am. Grayson's chest tightened. You're married. No, she said quickly. God, no. I'm not married. Then what? She took a breath. My name is Olivia Reamer. I own Reamer Capital. I'm a billionaire. Silence. Grayson stared. She kept going. I didn't plan any of this. That first night, I was driving aimlessly, and I ended up here. Then I couldn't stop coming back. You're a billionaire, he repeated slowly. Yes. And you've been hanging out in a gas station for fun? Her voice cracked slightly. No. I've been hanging out here because of you. He didn't say anything. I fell for you, Grayson. His breath caught. I didn't mean to. But the way you talk about your son, the way you show up night after night, even when you're exhausted. You're kind. Real. I don't meet people like you in my world. He still didn't speak. She stepped closer. I'm not asking you to jump into anything. I needed you to know the truth. And I needed you to know that I care. He watched her, heart pounding. You fell for me? He asked quietly. Yes, she said, voice barely above a whisper. His voice was rough. You're way out of my league. She smiled. Let me be the judge of that. And for the first time in years, something broke open in Grayson's chest. Hope. Real, terrifying, beautiful hope. He didn't know where this was going. But he knew one thing. He wanted to find out. The following evening, Grayson found himself shaving in the employee restroom, squinting against the flickering light bulb. It wasn't vanity. It was nerves. His hands weren't steady, and a dull razor wasn't helping. He hadn't cared much about his appearance in a long time, no point when the only people who saw him were truckers and tourists asking for directions, but tonight, he couldn't help himself. Because Olivia had said she was coming back. He didn't know what to expect now that the truth was out. She'd dropped a bombshell and left with only a promise to return. And he'd barely managed a response. He'd spent the entire day turning her words over in his mind like an impossible puzzle. By the time she walked in just after 10, Grayson had reorganized the refrigerated drinks for the third time. She didn't come alone. A woman in her 50s, with silver hair pulled into a low bun and a posture that suggested she ran entire empires without blinking, stepped in behind her. Olivia gave a small nod toward the office, where Harvey was already curled up with his headphones on. This is Frances, she said softly. She runs my household. I asked her to stay with Harvey so we could talk. Grayson's brow lifted. You brought your house manager to babysit my kid? She's certified in emergency response, Olivia said calmly. And she raised 3 children of her own. I wouldn't trust just anyone. Frances stepped past him without a word, offering only a polite nod. Within moments, she was seated beside Harvey, flipping through one of his dinosaur encyclopedias. Grayson let out a slow breath, then followed Olivia out into the rain-damp night. They didn't speak until they reached the edge of the overhang, where the neon lights flickered above them and the hum of the ice machine filled the quiet. You said you cared, he finally said, folding his arms over his chest. I do, but you didn't tell me who you were for weeks. I was afraid you'd treat me differently, she said. Most people do. I didn't want to be seen through a filter of money or reputation. I just wanted to know what it felt like to be ordinary. He looked at her, at the way the light caught the edge of her lashes. You don't get to play at being ordinary, Olivia. Not when you can leave town on a whim and buy pastries that cost more than a week of groceries. I wasn't pretending, she said. Not with you. But you were hiding. She didn't flinch. Yes, I was. And I'm not proud of it. He leaned against the pillar, rubbing the back of his neck. So what now? You drop this truth in my lap and expect me to do what with it? I don't expect anything, she said carefully. I came here because I missed you. And because I want to know if there's space in your life for someone like me. He laughed once, not unkindly. Someone like you? You mean someone who could probably buy this whole block and have it bulldozed before breakfast? There's more to me than money. I'm sure there is, he said, his voice low. But I'm a guy who's barely keeping the lights on. My world doesn't have room for limos and private jets. I'm not asking you to change your world, she said. I'm asking if I can be part of it. Grayson looked away, jaw tight. You don't get it. My life doesn't have a safety net. If I fall, Harvey falls too. I can't afford risks. She stepped closer. I'm not a risk, Grayson. I'm here. For now, he said. But what happens when you get bored? When the novelty wears off and you go back to art galas and boardrooms? I haven't been to an art gala in over a year, she said. And I left a boardroom early today just to be here. He didn't answer. She glanced down. I've been asked out more times than I can count. But no one's ever made me feel the way you do when you talk about your son. That's not a reason to start something. No, she said. But it's a reason to try. Silence stretched between them, charged and uncertain. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled something out, a small, worn paperback book with a cracked spine and faded title. I found this at a secondhand shop yesterday, she said. It's about a kid who builds a time machine in his garage. Thought Harvey might like it. Grayson stared at the book in her hand, then slowly took it. You tracked down a used kid's novel in the middle of your billion-dollar life. I did. He looked at her for a long moment. You're not who I thought you were. I know. That's not a bad thing, he added quietly. The air shifted. She took a step forward, closing the final bit of distance between them. If this goes nowhere, I'll walk away. But if there's even a sliver of space in your life where I fit, I'll stay. He studied her, heart pounding. I don't know what this is yet, he said. But I don't want you to leave. Her breath caught. Then I won't. They stood there, inches apart, two worlds colliding under the hum of electric lights and the scent of diesel and rain. Inside, Francis peeked through the window, then quietly returned to reading aloud from the dinosaur encyclopedia. Grayson didn't touch Olivia, but he didn't need to. Something had shifted, and for the first time in years, he wasn't just surviving. He was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, something extraordinary could grow from the most ordinary place in the world. Grayson stood on the sidewalk outside the gas station, staring at the black town car parked at the curb. The engine was still idling. Olivia had just stepped inside to speak with Francis, who was still reading to Harvey in the office. The night air was heavy with mist, and a distant train rumbled through the dark. He hadn't planned to leave work early, but Olivia had insisted. Said there was something she wanted to show him. Promised she'd arrange for someone to cover the rest of his shift. He had half a mind to argue until a sharply dressed man in a charcoal coat had stepped out of the car and handed him a signed release form from the station's regional manager. Apparently, Olivia had made a few calls. He didn't know what unsettled him more, the fact that she could snap her fingers and change his night, or that he'd let her. When Olivia returned, she'd swapped her heels for flats and tied her hair back. That detail hit him harder than he expected. It wasn't the elegance or the money that kept throwing him off. It was how effortless she made it look to meet him halfway. She opened the passenger side door. You're not going to regret this. I already do, he said, but he climbed in anyway. The car pulled away from the curb, gliding into the night like it had someplace far more important to be. Grayson glanced at her across the seat. I don't get in cars with strangers, he said. We're not strangers anymore. Maybe not, but I still don't know where we're going. Someplace you've never been. He didn't answer. The leather seat was warmer than he expected, and the city lights blurred past the window like abstract art. He kept his hands folded tightly in his lap. After 20 minutes, the car turned onto a private road flanked by wrought iron gates. Grayson sat up straighter. Is this your house? Sort of. The car came to a stop in front of a building that looked less like a house and more like a modern-day fortress. Glass walls, sharp lines, and a view that overlooked the entire valley. The driver opened the door, and Olivia stepped out first. Grayson followed, jaw tight. I didn't know billionaires lived in Bonneville and Lairs. She gave a soft laugh. I don't usually bring people here. Why now? She climbed the steps without answering. At the front door, she pressed her palm to a sleek scanner. The lock disengaged with a soft click, and the door swung inward. He stepped inside and froze. The interior was nothing like he expected. There were no chandeliers, no gold-plated fixtures, no towering sculptures. It was quiet, calming. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the back wall, and warm light spilled from handmade sconces. A fire crackled in the corner, casting shadows across a worn leather couch that looked actually lived in. She watched him take it in. This is the only place that feels like mine. He crossed the room slowly, glancing at a framed photograph on the shelf. It showed Olivia at a much younger age, standing beside a bearded man in a Navy officer's uniform. My father, she said. He used to say that people show you who they are when they're tired. That's why he always paid attention late at night. Grayson nodded. He sounds like someone who didn't waste time. He wasn't rich. Not until much later. He grew up in a trailer with 4 siblings. Built everything from nothing. So that's where you get it. She tilted her head. Get what? The quiet drive. He walked to the window, staring out at the lights below. Most people who climb this high forget how to be still. I didn't forget. I just learned to hide it. He turned to face her. Why me? She didn't hesitate. Because you're not afraid of silence. Because you look me in the eye. And because you didn't change when you found out who I am. I'm still trying to figure out who that is. So am I. They stood there, an arm's length apart, the firelight dancing between them. She gestured toward the back of the room. I want to show you something. He followed her down a narrow hallway lined with black and white photographs. At the end, she opened a door that led to a small studio. Easels stood in the corners, canvases stacked against the wall. One painting sat on a pedestal in the center. It was unfinished. Grayson stepped closer. The painting showed a man and a boy standing in front of a neon-lit storefront, holding hands. The boy was pointing at something in the distance. The man was looking at him, smiling. His breath caught. That's... She nodded. You and Harvey. From the night I first saw you. He stared at the brushstrokes, the attention to detail, the curve of Harvey's backpack, the faded name tag on Grayson's shirt. I didn't know you painted. Most people don't. I haven't shown anyone this. He turned to her, voice low. Why would you? Because I wanted to remember it. That moment, Grayson swallowed hard. This is more than just a hobby. It's where I go when the rest of the world feels too loud. He looked at her, really looked. You hide behind numbers and power because it's safer. And you hide behind exhaustion and duty because it's noble. He didn't argue. She stepped closer. I'm not offering you a bailout, Grayson. I'm offering something real. Something we build together. He searched her eyes. What does that even look like? She reached out, brushing her fingers against his. Let's find out. He didn't pull away. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he had to brace for loss. He didn't feel small or invisible. He felt seen. And when he leaned in, closing the final inch between them, it wasn't passion for passion's sake, it was something deeper. Something earned. When he kissed her, it wasn't a fairy tale. It was a beginning. The first time Grayson set foot inside the Reamer Foundation headquarters, he felt like he had wandered onto the set of a movie. The lobby ceiling stretched 3 stories high, with sculpted glass installations that shimmered in the afternoon light. People passed in tailored suits, brisk and efficient, while a grand piano played softly in the background. He adjusted the collar of the dark charcoal button-down Olivia had picked out for him, one of several shirts that had magically appeared at his apartment the day after their night in her art studio. She hadn't made a show of it, just handed him a simple box and said, if you're coming into my world, you'll need something that fits. He remembered how his pulse had quickened, not from the gift, but from what it meant. She was opening doors, not dragging him through them, but offering. Waiting to see if he'd step in. Today, he had. He'd left Harvey with Francis again, this time with a stack of Lego sets and a promised trip to the planetarium. And now, he stood beside Olivia in a glass elevator that climbed with eerie quietness toward the top floor. I don't belong here, he muttered, watching the city shrink beneath them. Olivia didn't flinch. You belong wherever you decide you do. The elevator opened to a private wing, no reception desk, no noise, just soft lighting and polished floors. She led him into a room lined with architectural models and design boards. Grayson blinked. What is this? She stepped toward a display table and lifted a cover off a detailed scale model. It showed a sleek, 2-story building with open windows and a playground tucked into a walled garden. A prototype, she said, for a program I've wanted to launch for years. Housing for single parents. Rent adjusted, with night care facilities, food support, and job training on site. He stared at the model, stunned. You've been building this? Not until recently, she said. I thought about it for a long time. But after meeting you, I stopped thinking and started moving. Grayson ran a hand through his hair. This is huge. It's still early, she said. But I want your input. Your perspective. I want you to help shape this. He turned to her slowly. You want me to work with you? I want you to be part of something that changes lives. Not because you owe me anything, and not because you need to prove yourself. Because you already have. He took a breath, heart pounding. I don't have a degree. I don't need a degree. I need someone who understands what it means to fight for a better life. Someone who's lived it. He looked at the model again. eyes tracing the pathways between the buildings. You're serious? Completely. I don't even know what I'd do. We'll figure it out. The door opened behind them. A man in his 60s stepped in, wearing a navy blazer and round glasses. His expression was curious, respectful. Grayson, this is Walter. He's head of the Foundation's transitions department. He'll oversee the logistics while we build the pilot program. Walter nodded. I've heard a lot about you. Grayson glanced at Olivia. All good, I hope. Only the important parts, she said. Walter extended a folder. If you're interested, we'd like to bring you on as a community liaison. Part-time at first. Flexible hours and full benefits. Grayson took the folder, not trusting himself to speak. Walter added, it's rare we get someone with first-hand experience who also knows how to connect with people. I'm just a guy who mops floors, Grayson finally said. Olivia stepped beside him. Not to me. He opened the folder and flipped through the details. It wasn't just a job. It was opportunity woven with dignity. A role that didn't pretend to rescue, but to empower. He closed it slowly. I want to help. I just need time to learn. Walter nodded. We'll teach you. Later that night, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Grayson stood on Olivia's rooftop terrace. The city buzzed below, but up here it was quiet. Olivia stepped out beside him, barefoot now, a glass of wine in her hand. You didn't have to do all that, he said. I didn't do it for you, she said, leaning on the railing. I did it because I believe in it. You just reminded me why I should. He rested his hand on hers. You scare me sometimes. She looked over. Why? Because everything with you is real. And I'm not used to real. Then we'll take it slow. He smiled. You're terrible at slow. She laughed. Maybe. But I'm good at follow-through. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars emerge. Then Olivia turned to him, voice softer now. There's something I want to ask you. And I don't want you to answer out of pressure or gratitude. Okay. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a letter handwritten, not typed. He opened it and scanned the lines. A scholarship offer. A spot for Harvey at one of the most innovative private elementary schools in the city. Full tuition covered. Transportation included. He swallowed hard. I know it's a lot, but I talked to Frances. She thinks Harvey's ready. He's bright, Grayson, and he deserves the kind of chance most kids never get. I can't. You can say no. He looked down at the paper. It's not that. It's just, no one's ever done this for us. She took his hand. Then let it be the first time. Everything in him wanted to say no out of pride. But when he pictured Harvey curious, hopeful, wide-eyed, he felt the answer settle in his chest. I'll talk to him, he said. But, thank you. She smiled. You're welcome. As the evening deepened, and the city lights shimmered like distant stars, Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. I have one more question, she murmured. And this one's for you. He turned to her. Come away with me this weekend. Just the three of us. No suits. No phones. Just space to breathe. I want to see Harvey build sandcastles. I want to see you laugh without thinking about rent. He exhaled slowly. Where? She grinned, a little lighter. There's a house by the coast. Nothing fancy. Big porch. Quiet beach. It's yours if you want it. He looked out at the skyline. For the first time in years, the weight on his chest had shifted. Yeah, he said. I want it. 2 days later, Harvey stood ankle-deep in the surf, yelling about a crab he'd found. Frances sat on a nearby bench with a sketch pad. Olivia and Grayson lay side by side in the sand, fingers laced. I keep waiting for the catch, he whispered. There isn't one. You sure? She rolled onto her side, brushing the hair from his forehead. I didn't fall for you because you needed saving. I fell for you because you never gave up, even when no one was watching. He pulled her close. Then I guess you're stuck with us. Gladly. And as the sun dipped into the waves, Grayson finally let himself believe it. They weren't surviving anymore. They were beginning. Together. Forever. Grayson stood at the edge of the lawn, the late spring breeze tugging at his sleeves as he watched Harvey chase a kite across the grass. The boys' laughter floated through the air, loud and unburdened, a sound Grayson never took for granted. Beyond the trees, the Reamer Foundation's first housing complex had finally broken ground. Construction crews were already laying the foundation, and a banner had been draped across the fence, a future built together. It had been 4 months since Olivia had handed him that folder, since she'd given him a chance to step into something larger than survival. And he had taken that leap cautiously at first, then all at once. He still worked hard, still rose early and double-checked figures twice, but for the first time, he wasn't doing it with exhaustion clawing at his heels. There was purpose now. Direction. Olivia emerged from the house behind him, barefoot on the stone walkway, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She handed him one, her fingers brushing his with a kind of practiced familiarity that still made his chest tighten. She wore jeans, the knees dusted faintly with flour she'd been baking with Harvey all morning. Her hair was tied up in a messy knot, and she looked more radiant than she ever had in $1,000 dresses. "There's a cinnamon roll disaster in the kitchen," she said, sipping her coffee. "Your son got creative with the frosting." Grayson laughed under his breath. "He gets that from you. He gets the chaos from me. But the heart? That's all you." He looked at her, letting the quiet stretch between them a moment. "You still think I belong in your world?" She tilted her head. "No. I think we built something new. One that belongs to both of us." They sat together on the edge of the porch, the sun warming their backs. The house they now shared wasn't the fortress she'd once shown him, but a quiet, sprawling property on the outskirts of the city. They'd chosen it together somewhere Harvey could run free, somewhere far from boardrooms and night shifts. "You haven't been to the city in weeks," he said. "I don't miss it," she replied. "Not like I thought I would." "You're not restless?" She shook her head. "For the first time in years, I feel grounded. And that's because of you." He was quiet for a moment. "You ever regret stepping into a gas station that night?" She laughed. "That sounds like the beginning of a very strange fairy tale." He glanced at her. "Well, I wasn't exactly Prince Charming." "No," she said. "You were better. You were real." Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, soft music played from the record player in the living room. Frances was visiting her sister for the weekend, and Harvey had fallen asleep on the couch after a full day of running, baking, and storytelling. Grayson stepped in from the porch, pausing to take in the scene. Olivia was standing barefoot in the center of the room, swaying gently to the music with her eyes closed. Her hair had fallen loose again, and the light from the fireplace flickered across her face. "Dance with me," she said, opening her eyes and reaching out a hand. "I don't dance," he said, but his feet were already moving toward her. "You do now." He took her hand, pulled her in close. The music was slow, something old and crackling with warmth. She rested her head on his chest as they swayed. "I used to think love had to be loud," she murmured, "that it had to be grand and shining and complicated. And now I know it's this. Quiet, steady, certain." He pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. "Then I guess it's my turn to be loud." Her brows lifted, curious. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "I didn't buy this with $1 billion," he said. "I bought it because I wanted to give you something that meant something. Not because I had to. Because I choose you. Every day." Over and over. She stared at him, blinking rapidly. "I want to marry you, Olivia. Not because it's perfect or easy, but because you make me better. Because you saw something in me when I couldn't see it myself. Because Harvey already calls you home." Her hands trembled as she took the ring. It wasn't extravagant, but it was beautiful. A simple gold band wrapped around a single sapphire, deep and steady. "Yes," she whispered. "God, yes." He slipped it onto her finger, and she threw her arms around him with a laugh that was half sob, half joy. They stood there tangled in each other, the music fading into the sound of the fire and the slow ticking of the old wall clock. Weeks later, they married beneath the trees behind their home. It was a small ceremony, just the 3 of them, Frances, and a few friends from the foundation. Harvey served as best man, proudly wearing a navy blazer and a dinosaur pin on his lapel. Olivia wore a dress she'd found in a local shop. No designer labels, no press, no fanfare. Just sunlight, laughter, and vows spoken with trembling voices and steady hearts. "I didn't think I'd ever find this," Grayson whispered as they danced beneath the string lights later that night. She squeezed his hand. "You didn't find it. You built it." Harvey tugged on his sleeve then, holding out a wrinkled drawing of their new family. Grayson lifted him into his arms, pressing a kiss to his son's temple. "Think we'll be okay, Captain Dad?" Harvey asked sleepily. Grayson looked at Olivia, who was watching them with the kind of love that didn't need words. "We already are," he said. And they were. In every way that mattered, they were home.